Disney claims they canceled The Acolyte because it was too expensive.
Sure, Jan.
Oh, what a dangerous web we weave when we spend without need. In an interview with Vulture, Disney Entertainment co-chairs Dana Walden and Alan Bergman talked about the state of Disney+. According to them, for the first time in years, the streaming platform pulled a profit. By November 2024, it had earned a return of $321 million, which the article admits isn't that much compared to the $200 billion value of the Walt Disney Company. But it is good news for the Disney Plus service, which has struggled to do well, and for Disney as a whole, considering its $10 billion losses in the last 5 years. Now, before anyone assumes this means Disney is raking in tons of money, that's not entirely true. Part of the reason for the profit is because Disney cut budgets, fired staff, and increased their subscription prices. So, while the company did make money, there's a little sleight of hand at work. Speaking of sleight of hand, the Disney Entertainment co-chairs tried to pull that with The Acolyte. When asked about The Acolyte's cancellation, Alan Bergman said this, quote, "So as it relates to The Acolyte, we were happy with our performance, but it wasn't where we needed to be given the cost structure of that title, quite frankly, to go and make a season 2. So that's the reason why we didn't do that." Yeah, okay, sure, I believe you. I totally believe you. Look at my face. I 100% believe you're telling the truth. Which is why I went looking for the budgets of the Star Wars shows. I don't doubt that the show was expensive. With all the VFX, I'd imagine it cost nearly $200 million to make. And from what I found, that's pretty close. Screen Rant had the most recent article about the budgets. According to that article, the initial estimate for The Acolyte was $180 million. But UK tax returns showed that the budget came in at $236 million, making The Acolyte the second most expensive Star Wars show after Andor. Andor cost $250 million, and the recent Skeleton Crew show, which is actually pretty good, comes in third at $136 million. So why am I skeptical about Bergman's claim? Well, if money were the issue, they could always lower the budget. Say what you want about the writing for the Star Wars shows, the look of Star Wars has never been better. These shows look incredible, and they're able to do that on $90 to $100 million budgets. Cut $100 million out of the show and see what you can do. That's been a practice in Hollywood since its inception, and it's not like anyone working at Disney doesn't know that. So, no, I don't believe this was solely over the budget. I think the issue is that The Acolyte didn't perform as well as Disney hoped, and I'm not just talking about viewership numbers. Keep in mind, Andor and Ahsoka didn't bring in the greatest ratings, and they're getting second seasons. I'm willing to bet Skeleton Crew will get a second season given the praise for the show. The difference between those shows versus The Acolyte is that the audience liked the characters from those shows, whereas none of the characters from The Acolyte got over. This is why I think Disney is simply cutting their losses. The show probably underperformed, and maybe Lucasfilm wasn't that attached to the show anyway, and they could always reduce the budget, but what's the point if the show didn't connect with an audience? That's why I think they canceled it. It's not about the money, it's that nobody cared. That said, The Acolyte wasn't the only thing on the chopping block. Walden and Bergman explained that Disney plans on streamlining their shows and films for Disney+. Basically, it's the quality over quantity argument. He also mentioned reducing the budget for shows in general by making them less VFX heavy. Depending on the shows and films Disney plans to make, that could be a benefit or a mistake. VFX technology has never been better or cheaper, and they can make something like Agatha All Along look good without breaking the bank. But if the show calls for lots of VFX, like a Star Wars show, cutting the budget could hurt the show by forcing the show to spread itself too thin. There is a way around that, which is nailing the pre-production to understand where the money needs to go and whether the concept in mind is even achievable on a limited budget. Take Andor. I don't think you can make a show like that and do it justice without spending real money. You'd have to compromise so much on the scale and scope of the show to make that work. That reminds me of Babylon 5. The writing for that show was impeccable, but it would have worked so much better if the show had the visuals to match it. If you want proof, go and watch Star Trek Deep Space Nine. It had twice the budget, and the look definitely helped the show. At any rate, I think The Acolyte was doomed from the start because it came across as a kind of vanity project. There's a good idea, several actually, buried in the show, but the execution was terrible. The writing and plot were jokes, and as great as Lee Jung-jae's performance was, it wasn't enough to carry the show, let alone redeem it. The Acolyte came across as badly written fan fiction, and the cast just had to do the best with what they were given. It's one thing to try to appeal to a female audience, which was supposedly the driving force behind the show. It's another thing to do it in the cringiest way possible. And, just in case you forgot,
the power of one, the power of two, the power of many.
That is why the show failed and got cancelled. Not because it had too big of a budget, but because they tried to finger bang their way to success. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.